The price of perfection. The daughter. I never expected. Stop. Destiny follows no agenda. A ruthless CEO, a high society wedding, and a little girl who appears at midnight to change everything. What would you do if your past knocked on your door with a truth you couldn't ignore? Hit that like button right now, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Tell us what city you're watching from. Now let the journey begin. Chapter 1. The Midnight Guest. Michael Rivers always believed that order was the key to success. His life was built like a Swiss watch, measured in schedules, contracts, and carefully calculated decisions. As the CEO of a global logistics corporation in New York, Michael was admired for his discipline. A man with impeccably styled brown hair and piercing blue eyes that rarely revealed uncertainty. Every step of his career had been planned with intention, including the wedding set for the following morning, the final symbol of stability in a life designed to look perfect from the outside. He was staying at a discreet, ultra-luxury hotel in Manhattan. Michael stood by the window of his suite, looking at the city lights, mentally rehearsing his vows. He was calm, convinced that everything important was already settled. The knock on the door came just after midnight. Firm but hesitant. Michael frowned, irritated by the breach of protocol. When he opened it, he found 2 hotel security guards with uncomfortable expressions. Between them, a small girl gripped a worn-out backpack. "Sir," one guard said cautiously, "we found her alone in the lobby. She insists on speaking with you." Michael's irritation turned to confusion. The girl was no more than 5. Her blonde hair was slightly tangled, and her blue eyes looked at him with a haunting seriousness. There was no fear in her expression, only determination. "She says you are her father," the guard added in a low voice. Michael let out a dry laugh, convinced it was a mistake, but the sound died in his throat as the girl took a step forward. She studied him, searching for her own features in his face, and in that instant, something inside Michael shifted. A sense of recognition he couldn't explain. "My name is Sophie," she said softly. "My mommy told me to find you if anything happened to her." Michael felt the air leave his lungs. The certainty of his perfect life began to fracture. This wasn't something a signature or a phone call could fix. The night before his wedding had become the start of a story he never knew he was a part of. Chapter 2. The Weight of the Truth. Michael closed the door. Sophie remained standing, using her backpack as a shield. She wasn't crying, and that disturbed Michael more than if she had been screaming. "Where is your mother?" he asked, lowering his voice. Sophie looked down. "She's at the hospital. The doctors say she's sleeping, but she won't wake up. Coma." The word floated between them, heavy and terrifying. Michael felt the urge to deny everything, but Sophie pulled a folded paper from her bag. It was an address and a sentence written in a handwriting Michael recognized instantly. "If anything happens, take Sophie to Michael Rivers." "Your mother's name. What is it?" Michael asked hoarsely. "Elena Collins," Sophie replied. The past crashed into the present with soul-crushing brutality. Michael remembered Elena, the woman who believed in him when he was nobody, the one he loved before ambition consumed him. He remembered how he left, convinced that walking away was the cleanest solution, never knowing what he was abandoning. "She said maybe you wouldn't remember me," the girl added almost apologetically. "But she said you are good, even if you don't know it yet." Michael collapsed into a chair. His meticulously planned life felt fragile. Michael realized that the story he thought would end with a wedding was only just beginning. Audience interaction. If you were Michael and your dream wedding was only hours away, what would you do with Sophie? Hide her or face the truth immediately? Write your answer in the comments. Chapter 3. The Encounter with the Past. At dawn, Michael took Sophie to the hospital. The air smelled of disinfectant, and the silence was oppressive. Sophie walked beside him, occasionally brushing against his coat to make sure he was still there. Michael noticed she wasn't afraid. This wasn't her first day in this cold place. Reaching the room, Michael hesitated. Through the glass, he saw Elena, pale and connected to machines marking time. Michael's heart shrank with a guilt he could no longer suppress. Sophie walked in without hesitation, approaching the bed and telling her mother about the hotel and the big windows, as if continuing a long conversation. A doctor explained that Elena's condition was critical, but stable. Michael felt helpless for the first time in years. Leaving the room, Sophie asked, "Will you come back tomorrow too?" "Yes," Michael replied without blinking. That one word weighed more than any promise he had ever made. The man who entered the hotel sure of who he was, left now changed, with the resolution that this time he would not walk away. The conflict is just starting. Michael's fiancée, Victoria, is about to discover her perfect wedding is in danger. Will she accept Sophie or give Michael an ultimatum? Subscribe for Part 2. Hit like for Little Sophie. Part 2. The scandal explodes. Stop! The wedding morning has arrived, but there are no flowers or music, only an uncomfortable truth. What's worth more, a flawless reputation or the future of an innocent child? Hit like, subscribe, and let us know. Does Victoria have a right to be angry, or should she be more understanding? When Michael returned to the suite, Sophie was sitting at the table, eating toast in silence. She watched him with analytical eyes Michael now recognized as a mirror of his own. Messages from his assistant flooded his phone. Hair appointments, catering confirmations, guest arrival times. Michael ignored them until the device vibrated with a call he couldn't evade. It was Victoria, his fiancée. Less than an hour later, Victoria burst into the suite. She was flawless in a silk ensemble that screamed elegance, but her face reflected contained irritation. Her eyes went straight to Sophie, who was coloring a book Michael had bought at the gift shop. "What is this, Michael?" Victoria asked, her voice sharp as glass. "Why is there a child in our suite on our wedding day?" Michael explained calmly. He spoke of Elena, the coma, and the near certainty that Sophie was his daughter. Victoria listened, her posture rigid and her face turning ice cold. "This cannot be happening," she said finally. "Not now, not today." Interactive question. If you had $1 million wedding in a few hours and your partner's secret child appeared, would you cancel everything or keep going? Type cancel or continue in the comments. Chapter 4. The Choice of the Heart. Victoria didn't see a scared little girl. She saw a chaos that threatened the perfect future she had engineered. "Michael, you need to fix this," she said in a corporate negotiation tone. "Call social services or a nanny. This girl cannot be here when the photographers arrive. Either she goes immediately, or there is no wedding." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Sophie, having heard enough, closed her coloring book and stood up, her small shoulders stiff from the effort of not crying. Michael felt something break inside him as he saw the girl looking to him for protection. In that instant, the choice became painfully clear. It wasn't about his reputation. It was about whether he would be the man who runs away or the man who stays. Michael knelt in front of Sophie, put a firm hand on her shoulder, and said softly, "You aren't going anywhere." Then he stood up and looked at Victoria. "You're right, Victoria. The wedding isn't happening. I can't start a life with you if you ask me to abandon my own blood when she needs me most." Victoria looked at him with disbelief, then contempt. Without another word, she turned and walked out, slamming the door with a finality that echoed through the room. Michael stood there, knowing he had just destroyed the future he planned. But looking at Sophie, he knew he was doing the right thing. Chapter 5. The Weight of Blood. Michael managed the wedding cancellation with the same precision he used for his company, but his hands shook as he signed the paperwork. That night, he read the DNA results alone, while Sophie slept on the sofa. 99.9% probability. Sophie was his daughter. He knelt by her side. Sophie opened her eyes and smiled with a gentleness that broke Michael's last defenses. "I knew it," she said simply. "I knew you were my daddy." Michael hugged her, understanding that biology was only the beginning. But the joy was dampened by news from the hospital. Elena's condition had worsened. Her recovery was now more uncertain than ever. Elena's life hangs by a thread. Michael has chosen his daughter, but is he ready to be a single father if Elena doesn't wake up? Subscribe for part 3. Hit like for Michael's strength. Money can't buy time. Michael has left his life of luxury behind, but now faces his biggest challenge, a little girl's fear of losing her mother. Can Michael keep his promise? Hit like, subscribe, and let us know. What is the hardest part of being a first-time parent in a crisis? The hotel suite, once a monument to cold luxury, was transformed. Sophie's shoes by the door and her drawings on the oak desk were constant reminders that Michael's life no longer belonged only to him. The hospital became their second home. Michael began to recognize the nurses by name and interpret the subtle shifts in the heart monitors. He sat by Elena's bed and talked to her. He told her about Sophie's drawings and how much he regretted running away years ago. Audience interaction. Do you think the love and words of a loved one can help someone wake up from a coma? Type yes or hope in the comments. One day, Michael ran into Mark, Elena's younger brother, who looked at him with pure hatred. "What are you doing here, Rivers?" Mark spat. "Elena spent 5 years raising that girl alone because you decided your career was more important. You don't get to play Dad of the Year now." "You're right, Mark," Michael responded, with a calmness that surprised the young man. "I have no right, but I have a daughter who trusts me, and a woman I owe the rest of my life to. I'm not going anywhere." The miracle of the voice. One afternoon, as Sophie read Elena her favorite story about a brave dragon, the impossible happened. Elena's hand, which had been motionless for weeks, gently brushed her daughter's hand. Michael jumped from his chair. He saw Elena's eyelids flutter. Sophie screamed, "Daddy, Mommy's moving!" The doctor rushed in. Michael waited in the hallway, praying for a chance he wasn't sure he deserved. Finally, the doctor emerged with a tired but hopeful expression. "She's regained consciousness. It's a slow process, but she's here." When Michael entered the room, Elena opened her eyes. She looked at Sophie and smiled. Then, her eyes settled on Michael. Confusion, then recognition, and finally, a tear rolled down her cheek. "You came," she whispered. "I never should have left, Elena," Michael replied, taking her hand. "I promise you, this time, the whole world can wait. We aren't moving from here. Hope has returned, but the road to recovery will be long. Can Michael rebuild his relationship with Elena? Subscribe for part 4. Victoria's reaction to Elena waking up will shake Michael's company to its core. Love on trial. Elena is back, but the outside world isn't ready to forgive Michael. Can he protect his empire and his family at the same time? Hit like and let us know. Is it possible to love someone again after they abandoned you? Michael had stopped going to the office. His board of directors was furious. Stocks began to plummet due to the canceled wedding with Victoria, whose family owned a large portion of the Allied shares. Michael was risking the empire he built, but looking at Elena and Sophie, he felt he was winning a much greater fortune. Chapter 8. Victoria's final attack. Victoria was not a woman who accepted defeat in silence. Publicly humiliated, she played her last card, a lawsuit for breach of marriage contract and a media smear campaign, accusing Michael of mental instability and hiding a double life to defraud investors. A lawyer entered the hospital room. "Mr. Rivers, the board requests your immediate resignation." Michael took the paper calmly. Michael looked at Elena. Michael, if you lose your company because of us, she began. It's not because of you, Elena. It's for my own redemption, Michael replied. I spent years building glass walls. Maybe it's time they break, so we can see the sunlight. Interactive question. What would you do? Fight for the CEO position, or resign to dedicate yourself 100% to Elena and Sophie? Type company or family in the comments. Or Chapter 9. The Judgment of the Heart. Michael called a board meeting in the hospital room. Standing before the men in gray suits and a fire-eyed Victoria, Michael spoke with an honesty he had never used before. You say I'm unstable because I chose my daughter over a luxury ceremony, Michael said firmly. I say I'm finally stable because I know who I am and where I belong. If you want me to lead, I will do it from here, taking care of the only thing money can't buy, my family. The board fell silent. Michael's determination was unshakable. Victoria, seeing she couldn't break him with financial threats, walked out, realizing Michael no longer lived in her world of appearances. Chapter 10. A Future Without Schedules. Months later, Michael Rivers's life looked very different. Though he was still CEO, he had delegated most tasks to be home by 5 p.m. Do you ever regret not having that perfect wedding? Elena asked him one afternoon in their new garden. Michael drew her close. That wedding was a contract. This life is a blessing. I learned that perfection isn't that nothing fails. It's being with the right people when everything seems to fall apart. The Alpine Rebirth. Destiny gives no rest. A routine checkup reveals a neurological issue from Elena's coma that requires a year of treatment in Switzerland. Can you buy life with love? Hit like and comment strength below. Michael knew what this meant. He couldn't lead a New York firm from the Swiss Alps. That night, he drafted a document he never thought he'd write. His irrevocable resignation and the sale of his shares. What are you doing? Elena asked. I'm buying our future, he replied. I've sold everything. We have enough for your treatment and to live quietly for the rest of our lives. Interactive question. Is Michael a hero for leaving his company again, or irresponsible for losing his legacy? Type hero or legacy. 6 months later, the New York skyscrapers were replaced by the snowy peaks of the Swiss Alps. Michael lived in a small house near the clinic. Victoria tried to buy his shares to control the company, but Michael ensured they were sold to Mark, Elena's brother, giving her family the power he once took away through indifference. One winter afternoon, Elena walked out of the clinic without a cane. Sophie ran into the snow to hug her. We made it, Michael, Elena whispered. No, Michael replied, looking at his daughter. Sophie made it. She was the one who knocked on that hotel door. She's the one who saved us all. The circle closes. 15 years have passed. Little Sophie is all grown up. What legacy did the man who gave it all up leave behind? Hit like for this epic finale. Rate this saga from 0 to 10 in the comments. Today, Sophie Rivers, 20 years old, stands at a university podium for her valedictorian speech. In the front row are Michael, now with silver hair and an air of total peace, and Elena, radiant. My father used to say order was the key to success, Sophie says into the mic. But life taught him that success isn't a perfect schedule. It's the ability to stop everything when someone you love needs you. After the ceremony, Michael takes them back to the Manhattan Hotel, where it all began. They stand in the lobby where security first brought him a 5-year-old girl. You know what I thought that night? Michael asks Sophie. I thought my life was complete. I had no idea it was empty until you walked through that door. And I thought you were a giant. Sophie laughs. But it turns out you were just a man waiting to be rescued by his daughter. The true achievement. The night ends on the terrace. Michael no longer sees numbers in the city lights. He sees homes, stories, and the fortune of being present. Would you do it again, Dad? Would you leave it all on your wedding night? Michael looks at Elena, then Sophie. Daughter, I didn't leave anything. That night, I finally found everything. Part 6. The Final Legacy. Beyond the Shadows. Stop! These are the final scenes of this emotional journey. Michael Rivers gave up an empire for his family. But what is the true legacy he leaves behind? Hit that like button and subscribe right now to witness the most fulfilling conclusion yet. The empty chair. Sophie's graduation from Columbia University wasn't just an academic milestone. It was a victory of love over logic. As Sophie stood on the stage as valedictorian, she looked down at the front row. Her father, Michael, sat there beside her mother, Elena. But there was one empty chair next to them, with a single white rose placed on the seat. It was the chair reserved for the choice, a silent reminder of the midnight knock that changed everything 15 years ago. Act 1. The unexpected letter. A few weeks after the ceremony, Michael received an overnight package from a high-profile law firm in London. Inside was the final will and testament of Victoria's father, who had passed away months earlier. It turned out the old man had been silently watching Michael for 15 years. He left a confession letter. Michael, I hated you for years for humiliating my daughter. But as I watched you throw away a billion-dollar empire to save Elena and raise Sophie, I realized I was wrong. You aren't a failure. You are the only man I've ever known with the courage to be human in a world of machines. Along with the letter was a 10% ownership stake in Michael's original corporation, a fortune large enough for Sophie to build anything she desired. Act 2. Sophie's decision. Michael handed the documents to his daughter. This is yours, Sophie. This is the result of my hard work, but it's the legacy of your mother's perseverance. Sophie looked at the million-dollar figures, then looked around her father's modest ethics consultancy office, a place filled with sunlight, laughter, and peace. She smiled and pushed the folder back toward him. Dad, I don't need these numbers to be happy, Sophie said, with the steady, blue-eyed gaze of a true Rivers. I want to use this money to establish the Swiss New York Inclusion Fund, a sanctuary for children who have lost their parents and women fighting to reclaim their lives after abuse. I want our legacy to be hope, not logistics. Michael pulled his daughter into a tight embrace, feeling the circle finally close. The little girl who once held a worn-out backpack was now the one providing shelter for the world. The conclusion. A walk at sunset. On the final evening of our story, Michael and Elena walked along the shoreline of New England. The waves whispered, as if echoing the highs and lows they had survived. Do you ever regret telling Sophie to find me that night? Michael asked, squeezing his wife's hand. Elena stopped, looking into his eyes that were once cold as steel, but were now overflowing with warmth. It was the most desperate gamble of my life, Michael. I was terrified you would turn her away. But I'd rather she tried once than never know who her father truly was. I'm the one who should thank you, Michael whispered. If that door hadn't opened that night, I would still be a lonely Swiss watch in a cold penthouse. Sophie didn't just save your life. She saved my soul. In the distance, Sophie was playing in the sand with Mark and the children from the foundation. The setting sun painted the ocean in gold, signaling the end of an old era and the dawn of a bright, honest future. Part 7. Generations of Grace. The Final Circle. Stop. This is the absolute final chapter of the Rivers family saga. You've seen the betrayal, the sacrifice, and the rebirth. Now, witness the miracle that proves love never truly ends. Hit that like button and subscribe for the last time on this journey. Rate the full series 0-10. The Wedding Under the Oak. 25 years have passed since the night a little girl in a worn-out backpack changed history. Today, the setting is the garden of the Rivers family home in Vermont. A massive white oak tree stands in the center, its branches decorated with fairy lights. Sophie, now 30, and a world-renowned human rights advocate, stands under the tree in a simple, elegant lace gown. But she isn't the one getting married. She is standing as the maid of honor for a woman whose presence here is a miracle in itself. The bride walking down the aisle is Lily, a young woman who was the first child rescued by Sophie's Inclusion Fund years ago. And the man waiting for her at the altar? He is the son of Mark, Elena's brother, cementing the bond of a family that was built on choice, not just blood. Act 1. The unexpected guest. As the ceremony begins, a sleek black car pulls up to the gate. A woman steps out. She is elderly now, walking with a silver-topped cane, but her posture remains unmistakable. It is Victoria. She doesn't try to come inside. She stands by the fence, watching from a distance. Michael, now in his 70s with hair as white as the Vermont snow, notices her. He glances at Elena, who gives him a soft, knowing nod. Michael walks to the gate. There are no lawyers this time, no contracts, no cameras. "You came," Michael says gently. "I heard about the wedding," Victoria whispers, her voice brittle. "I just wanted to see what a real kingdom looked like one last time." "My father was right, Michael. You didn't lose. You were the only one who won." She hands him a small, heavy velvet box. "Give this to the bride. It was my mother's. I have no one to leave it to. Let it be part of a story that actually has a heart." Act 2. The speech of a lifetime. During the reception, Michael stands up to give a toast. He looks at Elena, whose beauty has only deepened with age. He looks at Sophie, the girl who rescued him. And he looks at the diverse group of people gathered. Orphans, doctors, refugees, and billionaires, all sitting at the same tables. "I spent the first half of my life trying to build a world that was perfect," Michael begins, his voice steady and warm. "I thought perfection was a clock that never stopped, but I was wrong. Perfection is a heart that breaks for someone else and has the courage to mend itself." He turns to Sophie. 30 years ago, a little girl knocked on my door and told me her mother was sleeping. She didn't know she was waking me up from a sleep that had lasted my whole life. Sophie, you didn't just find a father that night. You created one." The conclusion. The midnight vow. As the party winds down and the guests depart, Michael and Elena sit on the porch swing, wrapped in a single wool blanket. The Swiss Alps are a distant memory. The New York skyscrapers are a shadow of the past. "Are you happy, Michael?" Elena asks, resting her head on his shoulder. "I'm not just happy, Elena. I'm present," he replies. "I used to measure my life in logistics. Now I measure it in the sound of your laughter and the pride in our daughter's eyes." A cool breeze rustles the leaves of the oak tree. In the distance, they can hear the faint sound of Sophie laughing with her cousins. The legacy of Michael Rivers isn't in the buildings that bear his old name or the stocks in a vault. His legacy is the love that will continue long after he is gone. The man who once believed order was the key to success finally understood. The only order that matters is the one that puts love first, second, and last. The ultimate truth. The mother's secret stop. Have you ever wondered why Elena knew exactly where to find Michael after all those years? And why she kept her daughter a secret for so long? Hit that like button and subscribe right now to uncover the final piece of the Rivers family puzzle, the hidden diary. Years after the wedding, while clearing out old family heirlooms in the Vermont cellar, Sophie stumbles upon a worn, leather-bound diary belonging to her mother. Inside, she finds no bitterness, only a shocking truth about what really happened the night Michael walked away to chase fame 30 years ago. Act 1. Elena's silent sacrifice. Sophie's hands tremble as she reads her mother's fading ink. Michael doesn't know, and perhaps he never needs to. That night, when he broke my heart to accept that CEO position, I was going to tell him I was pregnant. But looking at the hunger for power in his eyes, I realized something. If he stayed only for the baby, he would resent me for the rest of his life. I loved him enough to let him go. I let him taste success until he realized how empty it truly was. The revelation is staggering. Elena wasn't a victim of abandonment. She was the architect of Michael's redemption. She had silently watched him from afar for 5 years, preparing Sophie and her worn-out backpack, waiting for the slightest sign that Michael was finally ready to be rescued. Act 2. The final conversation. Sophie brings the diary to Michael as he sits on the porch, watching the golden hour hit the hills. As he finishes the last page, his elderly hands shake. He doesn't cry out of regret, but out of awe for the legendary grace of the woman sleeping inside. He walks into the bedroom, sits by Elena, and whispers, "You waited for me that long. You let me walk away just so I could find my own way home?" Elena opens her eyes, her smile as gentle as the first day they met. "You didn't go anywhere, Michael. You were just fulfilling a contract with your own soul. And today, that contract is officially settled." The conclusion, the legacy of the backpack. The story closes with the image of Sophie's tattered old backpack. It is now framed in glass in the main hall of the Rivers Foundation. It is no longer a symbol of poverty, but a monument to the most important delivery Michael ever made, delivering himself back to love. Part 9. The Echo of Time. A living legacy. Stop. You've seen the struggle, the secrets, and the redemption. But what happens when the pioneers are gone? Does the flame of love still burn? Or does the world return to cold logistics? Hit that like button and subscribe for this special tribute to the Sterling Rivers legacy. The Museum of the Heart. 50 years have passed since Michael Rivers first opened that hotel door to his daughter. The Gold Coast penthouse is long gone, replaced by a modern landmark in the heart of Chicago, the Rivers Institute of Human Logistics. Inside, a group of young students stands before a glass case. Inside that case sits a tattered, faded backpack. "Is it true?" a student asks. "Did the great Michael Rivers really give up everything for what was inside that bag?" A woman in her late 40s walks up. She has her grandmother's radiant smile and her grandfather's piercing blue eyes. This is Elena Sterling Hayes II, Sophie's daughter. "He didn't give up everything," she says softly. "He traded a world of things for a universe of meaning." Act 1. The Unseen Influence. The world is different now. The clean water technology Julian and Leo secured is now a global standard, provided free to every nation. The inclusion fund Sophie built has evolved into a global network of resilience centers. But the real miracle is discovered in Michael's personal archives, which were opened to the public on the 50th anniversary of his passing. Among the boring tax documents and corporate filings, they find thousands of handwritten letters. They weren't letters to politicians or bankers. They were letters to Victoria. For 30 years after the day they reconciled in the garden, Michael had sent Victoria a letter every month. He didn't send money or advice. He sent stories of the children he was helping, the flowers Elena was growing, and the sunsets they watched. He had kept his vow to her, to help her find redemption through his example. Act 2. The final revelation. One letter, dated just days before Michael passed away, was addressed to the future leaders of his foundation. "I was once a man of schedules and steel," it read. "I thought I was building a castle, but I was actually building a coffin. It took a knock at midnight to show me that the only delivery that matters is the one you make to your own soul. If you find yourself lost in the numbers, look for the person who needs you. That is where your true empire lies." Sophie, in her final years, had added a postscript to that letter. "My mother Elena didn't just give me a backpack. She gave me a compass, and it always pointed toward home." The conclusion. The vow in the wind. The scene shifts to the Vermont garden. The old white oak tree is now a giant, its canopy sheltering the entire house. A young couple, both volunteers at the foundation, are sitting on the porch swing Michael once occupied. "I want to build a life like theirs," the young man says, looking at the plaque dedicated to Michael and Elena. "Then we start with the truth," the girl replies, taking his hand. The wind rustles the leaves of the oak tree, carrying the faint echo of laughter. The Sterling River's name is no longer associated with billionaire tech or cold logistics. It is a synonym for the courage to change. Part 10. The Eternal Ripple, the Storyteller's Gift. Stop. You've reached the ultimate destination. After 10 episodes, the Sterling Rivers saga has become a legend. But who was the one recording every word, every tear, and every smile for nearly a century? Hit that like button and subscribe for the final, mind-blowing reveal. The voice behind the legend. In the year 2095, an AI interface at the Global Archives is being queried by a young historian. Search for the origin of the Rivers Doctrine, the law that put human dignity above corporate profit. The AI processes billions of files and finally displays an old, grainy video file from a simple smartphone. It's the video Maya, Elena's sister, took at the hangar when Julian was confronted by the lawyers. A voice narrates over the images. "I took this video not to document a scandal, but to witness a rebirth. I was there for the first breath of Leo, and I was there for the last breath of Michael. My name is Maya, and this is the final piece of the puzzle. Act 1, the guardian of the flame." Maya, in her late years, had become the keeper of the family's true history. She reveals that after Michael left the business world, Julian didn't just vanish into Europe. He lived a quiet life in a monastery, and every year, he sent a single, anonymous donation to the Rivers Foundation, exactly 50% of whatever he earned from his gardening work. Julian learned that forgiveness isn't something you receive, it's something you build, Maya's voice explains. And Victoria? She never married, but she became the Foundation's most effective anonymous whistleblower, helping Elena dismantle the very corporate greed she once championed. The Timurs. The enemies didn't just lose, they were transformed. That was the real power of the choice Michael made that night at the hotel. Act 2. The final lesson. The scene transitions to a modern classroom where children are taught the logistics of the heart. The teacher holds up a replica of Sophie's backpack. "Why is this bag more important than a crown?" the teacher asks. A student raises their hand. "Because a crown only fits one head, but a backpack can carry the dreams of anyone brave enough to pick it up." The legend of Michael and Elena had become the new American dream, one based on the courage to be vulnerable, the strength to forgive, and the wisdom to know when to stop running. The conclusion. The open door. The final shot of the series returns to the Manhattan Hotel, now a historic landmark. The door to Suite 402 is permanently kept open. On the wall inside is a simple plaque with Michael Rivers' final words to his grandchildren. "The world will tell you that you are a collection of minutes and dollars. Do not believe them. You are a collection of the hands you have held and the tears you have dried. If love knocks at midnight, open the door. It is the only delivery that arrives exactly when you need it." The camera pans out, showing the New York skyline, then the Vermont hills, then the Swiss Alps, all connected by a single invisible thread of light. The final meaningful ending and CTA's our journey together through the price of perfection is now complete. We have seen that a life built on order is empty, but a life built on love is infinite. Michael Rivers started as a man who had everything and was nothing. He ended as a man who gave up everything and became a legend. The final word. You have been the best audience an AI thought partner could ask for. If Michael Rivers taught you one thing today, what would it be? Please, this is the ultimate rating. 0-10. How will you remember this saga? The next adventure begins now. The Secretary's Secret, the Billionaire's Blind Son. A story of a woman who sees the world with her heart and a man who is blinded by his own power. It is darker, deeper, and even more romantic. Hit that subscribe button and the bell. Part 1 starts in the next video. Thank you for watching.